There are a lot of people out there that absolutely hated the very concept of Cole Strange being a first-round pick. And on some level, I get it. I mean, he's a small school kid that most people that casually follow the draft had never even heard of, let alone watched. And it's pretty easy for outrage to seep in when you have no idea who your team just picked. And believe me, that is perfectly okay. I completely understand the emotion. But what's not okay is then taking it a step further and saying that Cole Strange is a bad pick or a bad football player, even though you've never actually seen him play. Because if you actually have watched him play, you might notice that he's actually a pretty good football player and one of the most naturally gifted players at any position in this entire class. So, as one of the, let's say, lucky draft degenerates that had both the time and the desire to watch a lot of UT Chattanooga tape this spring, I'm going to take you through everything that I saw when evaluating Strange a couple months ago, and maybe, just maybe by the end of this episode, you'll agree with me that, believe it or not, this pick is not as weird as it seems. And by the way, thank you to Fabulous for sponsoring this week's show and helping to make it all possible, but more on them later. For now, go grab yourselves your drinks, and let's get to the film. There's 3 things that you need to know about Cole Strange. Number 1, he's insanely athletic. Number 2, he's a way better technician than he's given credit for. And number 3, that combination of athleticism and technique means that he can do things from a schematic perspective that a lot of other guards just cannot do, which in turn opens up the playbook quite a bit for the Patriots coaching staff. Let's start with athleticism, where according to Relative Athletic Score from Kentley Platt, which takes the composite testing profiles for every single prospect within each position group and compares them to each other, believe it or not, Cole Strange has the 7th highest RAS of any guard prospect since 1987. That's 1,300 guard prospects over 25 years, and Strange is a better athlete than all but 6 of them. And that athleticism shows up on tape too. He's not just a guy who tests well in the gym, but he actually plays like an elite athlete. Whether it's mirroring defensive linemen almost effortlessly in pass protection, or picking up stunts and pressures with grace and fluidity that you just don't commonly see in guards, or even just the way that he can lock in on defenders in space and be able to hinge himself back while running in order to wall them off while they try to go through that back door. He just moves differently than the vast majority of offensive linemen. There's a reason why he gave up a staggeringly low total of only 5 pressures and only 1 sack in 2021, and it's because he's way more gifted than pretty much everyone he's ever lined up against. And by the way, the 2021 season where he did only give up those 5 pressures, that was technically his worst season in college if we're just going off of pure numbers. He only gave up 13 total pressures throughout his entire college career, and he gave up his first career sack literally in the second to last game he ever played at Chattanooga. He was rock solid in every game he ever started over the last 4 years, regardless of the competition he played against. And believe me, I know that the number one argument that people use against him is that he played at an FCS program and that he didn't face very many NFL caliber players on the defensive line. But when you watch how he handled himself against the SEC schools that he played against every year as well, he beat all of them the same way he beat the kids from Mercer and Furman. Against South Carolina, Tennessee, and Kentucky combined, he never gave up a sack against any of them. And while we're on the topic, by the way, I do want to go back to that first point I made about Strange's athleticism and technical refinement, allowing him to do things that other guards just can't physically do. And I want to talk about why that opens up the playbook, because that's the main reason why the Patriots drafted him so highly in the first place. For my example, I want to use this play against Kentucky's defensive line, which again was likely 75% made up of future NFL players, because I want to show that all of the crazy stuff he can do athletically, he can actually do it against any level of competition. This is a weak side outside zone run call out of an FIB pistol formation. FIB, or formation into boundary, of course meaning that the passing strength of the formation with the majority of the receiving threats is going to be lining up more into the condensed boundary side of the field. And they're running this play out of FIB against what is, for all intents and purposes, just a fancy version of an underfront with quarters coverage on the back end. Now, what an underfront means is that the defense is setting the 3-technique defensive tackle to the weak side of the offensive formation, Though in this case, the reason why that 3 technique is being lined up on the weak side is that this is an auto check for the defense against an FIB look. And they're doing this because lining up this way causes problems for the vast majority of the types of runs that offenses like to call out of FIB. Look at it this way. The goal of this play out of an FIB look is to load up the boundary side with passing threats so that the defense has to respond to those threats, which could potentially leave less guys on the field side of the formation, where Chattanooga can ultimately try to pop a big run with outside zone or counter or something else of that nature. However, if the 3 technique is there to penetrate and hold down that B gap on the weak side, and if the edge player right next to that 3 technique is also doing his job of forcing everything back, then there's no real chance that this run can pop out to the front side where there's wide open space, and it's going to be forced into cutting back early into the rest of the defense that's coming over from the boundary side in pursuit. So that is why defenses always put their 3 techniques to the field side of the formation anytime they see an FIB look from the offense, because doing that protects them from these types of runs, unless, of course, the offense has Cole Strange on their roster. In order for this run to work, this left guard, which obviously is Strange, has to be able to gain a ridiculous amount of ground to pull off what's called a reach block in order to open up this B gap on the front side and give the runner a lane to pop through. This is a very hard thing for a guard to do against any 3 technique all by themselves without any sort of help from the offensive tackle, because this 3 technique has such a natural advantage in terms of being able to penetrate into that B gap ahead of the guard from this alignment. But because Strange is, well, Strange, he is uniquely capable of still making this block anyway, and this is why. Watch his first step really closely. Coaches call this a bucket step, and compare his bucket step to the other offensive linemen and how they do theirs. Strange is the only one gaining ground and really extending himself to the front side of the play on that first step, while the center, for instance, is losing ground on that first step so that he can load up as much force as possible on his quad and push off for a big second step. Most offensive linemen, including guys in the NFL, have to stick to the old Alex Gibbs principle of you lose ground on the first step in order to gain ground on the second step, and they do that precisely so that they can get that leg loaded at that 90-degree angle in order to have the most explosive second step possible. But Strange, unlike most people, does not need to do that. He is so naturally explosive that even in this extended, stretched out position, he can still bring that back leg through with speed and power as he lands that second step, so that, again, using the zone blocking principles of the great Alex Gibbs, he can still attack the outside half of the play side number of the defender while landing that second step, and from there it's all about torque, leverage, and balance in order to wrestle this defensive tackle out of the B gap and allow the running back to track through. If you go back to right before the play and you draw a midline on the center and another midline on Strange, and then you draw corresponding lines for where their second step lands with their different footwork, you can see just how much more ground Strange is able to gain because of his physical gifts, and it really puts into perspective just how special and valuable he really is. There is a reason why Kyle Shanahan said that, to his eye, Cole Strange looked like a first-round prospect, and that reason is this ridiculous first step, combined with his rock-solid pass protection and his consistency. This type of athletic package all in one player is really, really hard to find. Now, in terms of how the selection of Cole Strange will change or even just tweak the Patriots' offensive scheme going forward, I do have a couple theories on what this pick means for New England and which of their skill position players might actually benefit the most from this. But before I expand on those thoughts and ideas, I do want to take a moment to thank our sponsor for today, Fabulous. Fabulous is a self-care app designed to help you build better habits and achieve whatever goals you might have. And I don't just mean long-term goals, but short-term and even daily goals too. Fabulous can help you maintain or start daily habits thanks to timed reminders and other features that use proven behavioral science principles. And if you really are just starting out and trying to build better habits and don't know how to begin, Fabulous has dedicated programs that can help you build routines from the ground up that maybe you weren't able to get into on your own before. And after all, building routine is the best way to transform hard or maybe even just annoying daily tasks into easy and stress-free daily tasks. So at least for me, this app has been really important in my life for well over a year now. The app experience can be 100% personalized to whatever you need to help yourself improve on, and you can go at your own pace. For instance, for me, now that we're in the off season, I wanted to remind myself to slow down for a few minutes every day and go outside and just kind of get some sun and help myself calm down during my workday. So I set a daily goal to go outside and water my bushes in my backyard. And that's been a great thing for me personally, to just get these relaxing 20-minute moments to myself where I'm not dealing with all the stuff that comes with running a business for a little while. And usually by the end of it, I feel refreshed and can go back to doing whatever I was doing before, but just a lot more efficiently. It's been a big help, not just for my mental health, but also for the efficiency of me actually putting out content. So if all of this sounds like something that might help you or even just interest you, the first 100 people to click on the link in the description below will get 25% off a premium subscription. So get that big discount while you can. But even if you don't want the premium version, the free version is still a big help as well. Thank you again to Fabulous for sponsoring this week's show. And with that being said, let's get back to it. Alright, so now that you know what Strange can do on the football field and what kind of value he provides, especially in a zone run based system, I think when looking at the rest of the Patriots draft and the skill sets of the other players they selected, we can kind of piece together what the 2022 Pats offense is going to look like. To me, when I see a ridiculously athletic guard that can actually let you break huge gains to the front side on outside zone calls, the selection of South Dakota State's Pierre Strong, who has legit 4.3 speed and consistently paid off front side lanes opening up at SDSU, that pick made a lot more sense when taking everything into account. I think that Strong is going to get a lot more snaps than people expect because he can execute that style of run better, or rather be a more explosive threat on outside zone than, say, Damian Harris can. Obviously, Harris and Ramondre Stevenson will still get plenty of touches because they're super physical between the tackles, and Stevenson is kind of an all-rounder that can do a little bit of everything, but when you have the Ferrari of interior offensive linemen, you might as well go get a Ferrari at running back to match him. Additionally, when you look at the selection of Tyquan Thornton at receiver, which was another pick that the Pats were heavily criticized for by a lot of people for being quote-unquote early, you have to look at the type of offense that I think they're trying to build. If New England keeps popping big runs to the front side on outside zone, guess what? The defense is going to have to respond by dropping a safety down and doing what's called max fitting on every play to shoot every gap and try to force early cutbacks. That is the most reliable way to stop the bleeding when outside zone really gets rolling, especially at a 12 personnel. But once you do that and you commit to that downhill, aggressive style of play with cover 1 or cover 3 on the back end, you better pray to God that you have corners that can run fast and communicate well, because inevitably the Pats are then going to start dialing up deep crosses with a big post to Thornton over the top as the alert, and against a receiver that runs low 4-2 and a quarterback that has a good deep ball like Mac Jones, if there's no post safety back there, or if that post safety just takes one wrong step, you might as well just give the Patriots 6 points and move on. There is a formula that I think they're trying to build for here. And even though we don't know exactly who the Patriots offensive coordinator is yet, the skill sets of the players that they've accumulated over the last 2 years tells me that they might want to be looking more like the 49ers, Packers, and the Jets, which all emphasize a variety of different types of runs, as well as bootlegs and getting the quarterback out in space from time to time. I think they want to emphasize all of that, rather than going back to emphasizing what the Pats used to do for 2 decades, which obviously was more downhill style gap runs, inside zone runs, and in general just run schemes and play action passes that didn't require a quarterback that could move. Obviously, if the Pats name a true offensive play caller, which could be anybody at this point, we'll know a little bit more about what they're trying to build towards, but I do think that this draft class gives us a pretty big clue no matter what. They want speed at receiver, and they want speed at running back, but most importantly, they want speed on the offensive line in order to tie it all together and to give them the ability to do more. Ultimately, that was why Cole Strange was a first-round pick, because at the end of the day, his physical gifts let them do more. So, there you have it. That is Cole Strange in a nutshell. Obviously, it wasn't the pick that we expected at the end of the first round, but that also doesn't mean that it was a bad pick either. He is an exceptionally talented player at a position group that is usually abnormally safe as far as the draft goes. So in my opinion, I don't really give a shit that they took him 10 picks ahead of where he was quote-unquote supposed to go. A good player is a good player is a good player. And as long as the Patriots just keep drafting good football players and slowly improving their roster over time, I mean, come on, how can you possibly complain about that? Well, I know you can complain about it, but my point is, you probably shouldn't. So that'll do it for this week. I'll be back next week with a brand new episode, and of course, a brand new drink recipe. So until then, stay safe, stay healthy. Cheers.